Hi, this is Casey Smith, and this is my coaching reflection video submission. My plan is to define coaching, then to discuss some of the key components, findings that I found interesting, and then finally some personal reflections. On the left is the 50-word or less definition that I submitted on the discussion board. The middle has Kirsten's, and the far right has Clay's. And in bold throughout each of these definitions are the aspects that really stood out across all three of our definitions, as well as other classmates. For me, the components of coaching that stood out were the willingness to listen fully, being capable of being fully present, that should say, on the coach's part. I really like the notion of having the discipline to manage one's own thoughts during the coaching process and kind of restrain oneself from offering advice or opinions, but instead maintaining the questioning towards the coachee so that they can reflect. And finally, there's this underlying philosophy really about coaching that you have to really understand and believe that ultimately the coachee has the answers and the resources within himself or herself, and it's just a matter of going through the inquiry and the reflective questioning process in order to garner those solutions out of them. Components that a classmate referenced included having more of a structure in terms of agenda, goals, and even a timeline, having goals that are measurable, having transparency within your conversation, and being geared towards solutions and not focusing on the problem, but immediately moving towards what the options are for solutions. Some of the findings that stood out to me came from one of the articles related to coaching in the business world by Bauer. I did not know what ROI even stood for 1 week ago, so I can understand how that would be really relevant to businesses, and I can see how it could also be important for an education system to want to know ahead of time, well, how is this actually going to help us? What data can you show to prove? How are we going to measure to know that this is being impactful or effective? Bauer also discusses, as did McDermott, this last note, the idea or the necessity that there be a clear purpose ahead of time, and that that be communicated effectively across the organization. And I found it pleasantly surprising that education and business settings have more similarities than they do differences in their perceptions regarding coaching. This is promising for the education world if we decide to adopt coaching more of a regular basis as the business world has. And finally, what stood out to me because of my personal setting professionally is that the coaching can have more helpful outcomes when they are on micro level situations, whereas large concepts like morale or culture or values and conflicts within values really are out of reach of the impact that individual coaching can have. So I thought that was significant. Ultimately, for me, when it comes to coaching, I really like the fact that it is short-term focused and solutions oriented. I appreciated Garvey as well as the other videocast description of the GROW model, and especially out of that, I like that it ends with a written action plan that sort of would help the coach and the coachee to stay accountable towards that coaching session. I think coaching is applicable across situations, not just professional ones, but even personal ones. And in my daily practice as a teacher, what stands out is the inquiry process that if I'm doing my job well, am engaging my students in every single day. And that inquiry process has also been a large part of my learning and growth process so far in the EDD program in terms of curriculum courses I've taken. So I really like that overlap and that alignment that would be utilized in coaching should I do it more often with adults. And finally, a lot of the resources and ideas and general learning about coaching is very applicable towards a position that I am planning on proposing to my school board for myself. So that's exciting, and I think even our final project in this course will be very relevant to that and will be helpful towards that. And in terms of negatives or just deltas, acknowledging what stood out as questions is the challenge that I feel like I have in my district when it comes to the larger things that I can't control. Even, no matter how successful I might be or other people might be with coaching, these larger ideas like the culture and conflicts and values like lacking integrity and things of that nature. And also another thing that stood out throughout different pieces of literature was the need for the debate over, but certainly the acknowledgement that coaching is better or it's ideal if there can be some background training in psychology. So that stood out as something significant for me. If this were a direction in my career that I was going to take more seriously and pursue, I would want to get some of that background training to make sure that I was doing things the right way. That concludes my video submission. Here are my references. Thanks for listening.